Hello everybody and welcome to the Digital Craft Festival. Today I'm joined by makers, these wonderful makers here who are all part of Craft Festival Bobby Tracy and Craft Festival Cheltenham. My name is AnneMaries. I work with the Gloucestershire Guild of Craftsmen. We're a charitable organisation made up of some fantastic designer makers, and we're always really involved with Craft Festival Cheltenham, so it's a real honour that we're here today to be talking with these makers. Our topic for the day is really about creative journey and the why. You know, why artists and makers do what they do. I think it's a really, why people do what they do is such a fantastic story. I think that all makers and designers have. So I'm joined by Katherine and Libby and Kathy and Jennie and Kiya and Naomi, and they're going to talk to us, hopefully in a conversational way with lovely involvement from each other about why they do what they do. Kathy, welcome. I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your practice and what you do and why you do what you do?
Okay, so I'm a printmaker, and over the years, actually no, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm a printmaker, and I always, well, for even as a child, wanted to do something to do with art. But one of my first kind of impressions or I suppose contacts with printmaking, other than maybe potato printing as a really, really tiny child, was probably about age 8 or 9. I went with my family to the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool, which was local to us. And they obviously had one of those kind of, get hands-on kind of family fun days. And I remember doing screen printing, and I actually don't even remember if it was an image that I drew and then I was able to screen print. So actually the image doesn't seem to be important, but what stuck with me, and I still remember, and it still kind of gives me, when I think about it, that same kind of feeling, was the process. That obviously I was like an 8-year-old, and you get to mess with gloopy ink in all these beautiful bright colours. And yeah, the process that you could just kind of pull this weird thing called a squeegee across the top of this screen, lift it up, and there was this perfect image in this beautiful bright colour underneath. And yeah, that stayed with me, and I just always wanted to do something kind of to do with printing, really. So I went to college, Dundee University, did printed textiles degree, which was screen printing, but as a secondary subject I did printmaking, and that's actually more what I fell in love with. Rather than putting images into repeat to go onto textiles, it was more the different processes, the very messy inky processes that I fell in love with. And I did that for a while, and then it was in the age, I suppose, before internet, and basically to get another job, to get the next piece of work, you had to go around door to door and almost like sell yourself. And for an introverted person, that's really a nightmare. So I ended up actually not doing it. Went into buying, was a buyer, product developing, and then it was only when I kind of left to have my children that I kind of always at the back of my mind I wanted to do it, and I did do it as a hobby still, but that stopping and giving me that opportunity to kind of make a go of it. And well, it's, I don't know, I feel like, sorry, I'm talking too much now.
Not at all. And when you did go back to it, Kathy, was there a real joy there for you, almost of rediscovering it again? I know you said that you always did it as a hobby, but then to really do it again as a passion in your business, did it just reignite that whole reason of, this is what I really love doing?
Absolutely. And then I realised that without doing it, I don't feel like me. It's it's almost like a need. So it's like I have to do it. So even when the children have been young and at school, or now even with like lockdown, I've got 3 girls at home. The youngest is 5. It is a real nightmare trying to get some time in the studio. But if I don't, I know it's just always in my mind, and I know if I get time to actually create something, it's kind of anxieties go, or it's just you're there in your space doing your thing. It is, I feel like it's part of me, and without it I just don't feel right. suppose. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. I love that whole, which is why I love the whole question of creative journey and the why, because that's where I think when your passion comes out, you know, just speaking to you, you can really feel your passion for what you do, which I think is just fantastic as an artist. Absolutely. And how do you want your work to make your buyers or customers feel? Have you thought about that, or have you seen, you know, the love that somebody can show for something that you've created?
Yeah, it's really nice. Well, I think about how I want people to feel,
Yeah.
but people write to me, you know, a piece of work, and you know, say it's that they're you know they're bright and they're cheerful, but it brings like kind of calm. There's a calmness to them as well. Generally, I'm not a very calm person. I'm kind of doing like, you know, a million different things, always like, as you can see, waving my arms around. But yeah, people say it just, you know, it brings like there's a calmness to the images, or there's some kind of, you know, quirkiness to them that, yeah, it's lovely when you get that kind of feedback from people, especially, you know, most people say it's hard to photograph, it's hard to photograph most pieces of work, whether it's, you know, ceramics, jewellery, printing. I find it especially hard. My work has a lot of white background, so to get the colours right and everything. And when people write and say, oh my God, it's even better, you know, it's even better in reality. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's lovely.
Kathy, is that your work in the background that we can see? Or have
Yes.
you got, yes, that is great. Okay, because I was going to say, do you want to, have you got a piece that we can, you know,
Yeah.
that you can show us?
I kind of work in two different styles. So this is kind of like silhouettes, which are liner printed. And then recently I've been doing, you'll be able to see like on Instagram, recently I've been doing some very big pieces for the Artist Support Pledge. And they're kind of A1 size, so they're much bigger. And they're screen printed rather than liner printed, but they're still kind of the silhouettes. Or I do kind of have another style, which is kind of like, oh, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, perfectly, yes.
Lines are mono printed, and that's kind of a bit more kind of quirky. Yeah, little kind of.
Lovely.
They're lovely.
They really are lovely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Quite a different style, but they all come from, I don't know, the same starting point, and then I just kind of work in two different ways.
And if you like you were saying earlier about that, if you don't do it, you kind of feel like something's missing. You know, do you, like, let's say like you go on holiday, are you then kind of really itching to be back in your studio?
Yes, but only, well, no, not necessarily back in the studio, but I do like to kind of sketch. So I will always try and take sketchbook and stuff with me. But I find that when I'm away and when I can't, if you know you can't get in the studio, that's when I feel a lot of the ideas come actually.
Okay, yeah.
So then it's almost like trying to capture them. How do you write them down? How do you sketch them and keep them fresh for when you can get back in the studio? Yes. And then it's a case of almost too many ideas, and then actually what what work on, which is probably why I've got two different styles.
That's fantastic, Kathy. Thank you so much. Libby, welcome to the festival. It's fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and a bit more about your journey as well, please?
Yeah, I mean, I really resonate with Kathy there, with saying that she was from quite an early age. She always remembers being creative. And one thing that I always remember being younger is, I think I spent most of my childhood in a tree in the back garden, and I used to take loads of different like art materials and stuff up there, and I would sit up there for hours making things using the leaves, using the bark. And then one thing me and my friend used to do is we used to make like miniature gardens, we used to call them.
Lovely.
Which was really, really bad, to be honest, because we used to go around and pick flowers, and we thought just by putting them in soil that they would survive, but they never did. So for me, I think the creative process has always gone like hand in hand with quite natural aesthetics. So when I first went to college, I studied 3D design and BTEC level in it as well. And using textiles, sculpture, it was really nice to be able to work with my hands.
Mm.
And I think that became really important to me, to be able to actually have something physical and use that. And then that's what kind of led me into going into 3D design at university. So I did ceramics, plastics, woods and metals.
Mm.
Always thought that I'd go into ceramics, purely because of the, really hands-on material, and it's, you can manipulate it and pull it. But then when I started doing metal, something unusual happened, and I was using quite unpredictable processes. So I was using etching, rolling, and really pushing the metal in a different way. And I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't expect it to produce the outcomes that it did. And it kind of went from there, really. I was creating these really strange little biological specimen-y type things that you could imagine getting up and crawling and then working their way onto the body. And that's kind of how I got into jewellery, really, was more of wearable art pieces than kind of traditional jewellery. So I started researching into art jewellery and came across Schmuck, which happens in Munich. And this led me down a big rabbit hole of amazing contemporary jewellery. And I just fell in love with it from there, really.
Fantastic. And how do people react to your jewelry? Because, like you say, it is more of it's an art. It's more of an art. I know that all jewelry is kind of art to wear, but yours is really kind of statement, different. How do your customers react to that, and how does that make you feel as the creator of it?
Well, I think for me, it's really nice to be able to be face to face with customers, because I think there is quite a strong element that you need to be able to hear the story behind the pieces and the method of how they're made as well.
Yeah.
So when you can kind of I'll start saying about the processes, and you can just see people's ears kind of like prick up. And it's amazing when people connect their own story to a piece of work.
Yeah.
And that, for me, you kind of get that feeling. You just say, they get it, they understand. And I mean, I suppose that's one of the things with lockdown, is we're not able to be face to face with customers, as I think that's such an important aspect of my work. So it's been challenging, but we're doing the different methods to be able to communicate to people, and this is always challenging for creatives, I think, to put themselves out there.
And that's a really good point, though, about that whole face-to-face, and the fact that there aren't going to be that many of face-to-face events, and how we can pivot to the way that we sell our work and show all of that online, because actually it's very difficult, because, like you say, just having that that natural lovely conversation and explaining to people your work, it's a whole different way of doing things. So that is going to be a challenge. And can you answer the question? It's a bit of a difficult question, I think, so don't feel pressured that that you have to have an answer, but what does creativity actually mean for you, to you?
Well, I suppose, I think when it's been in your life constantly, again, as Kathy was saying, you kind of, when it's not there and you're not allowed to be able to get access to it, you can feel that something's missing. So it's always there. But I suppose creativity for me is being able to explore with different materials and not necessarily making an outcome. You're just experimenting and trying different things. And, like I said, there's not necessarily a path that you're going to stick to. And problem solving, and it takes you down different paths, and it's that kind of freedom that it gives you. And again, is almost as a therapeutic method to be able to relieve anxieties, and again, being really hands-on with the material. I suppose that's where I would say, what creativity means for me.
I've got a general question for all of you now, only so maybe it's going to be difficult to answer, but maybe kind of nod your head in agreement or not. But do you all have moments when you are just playing with creativity, either in the discipline that you're in or in something totally different? Like maybe in lockdown, have any of you just picked up a different media and gone, I'm just going to mess around with this and see what happens? Libby, I think maybe you do it already because you have done a lot of work with different materials, but have any of you others just literally played with something else to satisfy your need for creativity?
I think during lockdown, I have found it the least creative part of my entire life, to be honest.
Wow.
I found creativity really, really hard during this time. I've been making work and sort of making orders for people, but actually doing anything new or inspired, I just found it really hard. I found concentration almost impossible.
Okay.
And I know there's all these people who say they're writing books and making music and doing stuff like that, but I don't think that it's that uncommon that people have found that it's really not a good time to be creative as well.
Yeah, because our heads are actually just too full of all kinds of other things too. Naomi, let's come to you now, as you've been speaking. Welcome to. Can you tell us more about your work and your journey, and also, as I say, your why, why you do what you do?
Yeah, well, much like Kathy and Libby, I think I started making things. I mean, as soon as I can remember, I was making things. My mum used to sew, and so I learnt to sew, and I made toys out of old sheets and towels, and I made peg dolls in shoe boxes and all sorts of stuff. And I remember doing ceramics at primary school, and I was making my own clothes by the time I was, I don't know, about 12 probably. And then I think there was a jewellery workshop opened up in the town that I lived, and me and my friend were like, oh, should we go and see if they're doing evening classes? And so when we were 14, we started doing jewellery, and then at school we did metalwork. We actually had to go and change the whole, at school girls were supposed to do home economics and boys did metalwork. So we sent our mums in and we got to do metalwork at school. Yeah, it was a bit crazy. I mean, it was a quite progressive, it's in Lewis, and that's quite progressive, but even then, and I'm not that ancient, but it was still, we were the first year that got to do metalwork. But I think just from then, I just knew that that's what I was going to do. So I just went through, then did foundation, did a degree course at Middlesex, which was very broad. So there was a lot of, I actually came out, I was making wooden jewellery when I finished college. And I really, talking of process, I just really enjoyed the process of making the wooden jewellery. But then I realised, I stuck with it for a bit and then realised that what I was doing was so time consuming that it wasn't, although I still like the things that I made them, they're so labour intensive. And I always just wanted to be able for it to make me a living as well. I didn't want to have to go and get a job and then make as an aside. I knew I wanted to make a living, and I went back to metal, and I love working in metal. So I carried on doing that, and the stuff that I'm making now started about 15 years ago in the park when my son was young. He was obsessed with feathers. He had a feather cape, bridesmaid cape that he wore everywhere, and he used to pick up feathers in the park. And I started rolling those, and then just looking for anything that I can roll. So I do textured things. I've got just one here that I'll show you.
Please.
This is flower. I don't know if that's very good.
Yeah, you can see it. Yes,
that's lovely. Flowers rolled into the silver, and then it's got a leafy ferny thing on the back. But yeah, that's not its best. Yeah, so I do a lot of textures using plants, and feel like they feel quite like fossils, like they could be dug up. And I think there's a whole thing with jewellery. I think it is quite an ancient sort of elemental thing. I think people have always wanted to adorn themselves in some way or another, and every now and then I feel like I should be doing a more important job, and then I think it is really important. People buy jewellery for significant moments in their life, and it means a lot to them, you know. And so then I realised that maybe what I'm doing is important-ish, but it's
absolutely, it's that joy though. I just see it as a joy. You know, I know myself as a customer, you know, I'm not a maker. The joy I get from buying something, and like you say, it's especially like with jewelry that you then wear and you look at, you know, every day that I look at my rings and I look at my necklace, it just brings me joy, you know.
Yeah.
So what better job could you have than to bring other people joy?
There couldn't be anything more important, particularly at the moment, I think.
Yeah, and that's, people have said that they're definitely, you know, buying. I think people are buying carefully, but they are buying things that bring them joy. So
absolutely, yeah. And you must, and I presume that when you see somebody wearing your work, do you get a buzz? Do you still get that buzz of, oh, I made that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I had a really nice one recently, actually, with 2 daughters who'd both been bought rings of mine for significant birthdays, who'd then got in touch with me to buy their mum a ring for her birthday. And so that was really lovely, you know, the 3 women in the family all having a piece of my jewellery.
Absolutely.
Things like that, really, really lovely.
Wonderful. Kiya, welcome.
Hi. Okay.
Hi.
So nice to hear everyone speaking. It's so interesting.
It is, isn't it? It's lovely. I'm really enjoying it. Tell us about you, please, and your work and your journey, and again, your why.
So I'm also a jeweller. I really relate to a lot of what Naomi and Libby have been talking about. I think the 3 main things I do are these collection pieces, which is what you can see behind me. But I also do bespoke, so that's kind of engagement rings that are designed and made for specific people. And the third thing I do is I rework people's old jewellery. If they've got an old heirloom that's been passed down to them, or something that's broken, I can bring it back to life, and it maintains its sentimental value. So that's a really good thing to be able to do for people. I guess I'd probably have to start again, like everyone else has said. I've been creative since I can remember, really. Really creative, so I guess that's kind of where it started. It's what I've always enjoyed doing, so it's always just been a big part of my life. And I guess I was quite lucky because my parents never really minded me doing only creative subjects. I wasn't that academic, and so I guess the simple answer is just that it's just who I am. It's always been a part of my life. You probably do quite a lot of stuff. It's quite simple sometimes, especially.
Yeah, I love that though. It's just who I am. That's an absolutely wonderful answer, you know. Perfect. And can you just tell us a little bit about how
it should be a bit more complicated.
No, yeah, but you're right. Sometimes it just doesn't need to be complicated at all. And how did you get to where you are now? You know, what was your journey? You know, your study? Are you self-taught or?
So I always did creative subjects through school, but I did more painting and textiles and things like that. And then I also did an art foundation, and that was where I first did metalwork. And I just loved it because it was so different to anything I'd done before. Even though I'd always done creative things, I'd never really thought about being able to work with metal. Since I started doing that, I really loved it. And then after my foundation, I went on to do a jewellery degree at Birmingham. So I'm in Birmingham now, so that's kind of how I ended up here, because there's a really good jewellery school.
Okay.
And so I did the degree, and then I worked for a manufacturer, an engagement ring manufacturer, for a few years. And it was a really good job, but it was kind of office-based. It was designing and 3D modelling engagement rings. And I think I just felt like I needed to be a bit more independent and have a bit more variety in my day, because it was quite a big manufacturer, so it kind of felt like a bit of a production line. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do after that. So I kind of took a bit of time out and went to Mexico for a couple of months. I think I was hoping I'd have a bit of a brainwave and decide what while I was out there. I had a great time, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I had all of the tools that I'd been using at uni. And so I decided just to start making again and see if I could sell some pieces just in the... And I've kind of just carried on from there. That was 2.5 years ago.
Fantastic.
I haven't really stopped. But yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. I think I'm taking it a bit more seriously now, and I kind of have accepted this is what I'm doing, and it's actually quite a nice place to be. I've got loads of plans. I'm designing an engagement ring collection at the moment, so yeah, there's a lot of exciting things ahead. Yeah.
And all your work with in the engagement, that company that you did work for when you first left university, I mean, all of that must really inform what you do now, which is just fantastic. You know, do you find that you're really building on the skills and the design techniques that you learnt there? Yeah,
definitely. I couldn't have done it without doing that job, because I learnt so much. Because at uni I did CAD design in my final year, and then that job I was doing CAD design all day, every day. Okay. My work now, I don't think I'd be able to do what I'm doing now without it.
No, exactly. Fantastic. Yeah. And do you ever doubt that what you're doing is the right thing, or are you absolutely convinced that, I should have asked all of you this because I love this question, that you really are in the right place for your creativity?
I'm never sure of anything, to be honest. All the time. But I really don't know what I'd do if I wasn't doing something creative. I don't really know if I have another option, but I really love it. But I'm the same as Naomi. I have doubts and think, oh, is this really the most important thing to do? And so that's why I really relate to what she was saying about it being such an important thing throughout history as well. I find that quite interesting, and it kind of makes me feel, I don't know, to what I'm doing. I think it's such a universal thing. People have been wearing jewellery for thousands. And in every culture, apparently the oldest known piece of jewellery was made by Neanderthals, for 100,000 years ago. So it's just amazing. It just shows we're just so sentimental.
Yeah. Yes. So I think, and also sorry, go on.
I just think it shows that we haven't just been surviving for this whole time, in creating and making emotional connections. And yeah, I think it's really
absolutely. And like Naomi said, that whole thing, you know, that how special it is that people in the same family have, you know, pieces from Naomi, but also that real heirloom. You know, I don't have masses of jewelry, but already my daughters say, when you go, Mum, I'll have that one. You know, do you know, it is that, and that is so special. You know, that whole, you know, that kind of the beauty, not only the beauty of what it is, but all the memories and the sentimental value, like you say, that these creative things hold for so many people. It's just fantastic. That in itself is a huge why, isn't it?
Yeah, I really feel that there's no greater compliment than someone choosing something that you've designed and made and choosing to wear it next to their skin for years and years. And it almost becomes a part of them. It's like you adopt something, especially like a ring or something like that, because it really becomes a part of that person. And then, as you say, after they're gone, it's kind of what people have left of them. And so then it's really special when I work with people's like grandmother's engagement ring or something like that. It just adds to their story, and it becomes a conversation piece. But then it also takes something that's maybe been gathering dust in a box to making it something that they wear every day. So it's really lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, thank you. Jennie, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing? We'd love to hear about your why and your journey.
My why and my journey is very similar to everyone else's. Yeah, I just have been creative all my life. And I did a diploma at York College in general art and design. It covered all bases. There was lots of things I thought I could do and I couldn't. And then when I got into the metal room, the processes just overwhelmed me. I just had an affinity with it. I just loved the processes. So that naturally led me to a jewellery and silversmith degree in Sheffield. And I've been here for 30 years. And initially I designed for trade, so I did. Sorry, I'm going to run out of battery. That's really professional, isn't it? That might.
Do you want to go and get a charger, Jenny? Do you want to go and get a charger?
I might plug that in. Yeah. Do you want
That's... Don't worry.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. I'm going to probably have to move my phone now as well.
Don't worry.
Do you want to leave me and I'll join you on my laptop? Is that going to be
if you're plugged in now, I think that should be fine.
Hang on a sec. Just got to find a plug to put it into. Yeah, I might have to move. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Talk to someone else for a bit.
I'm going to talk to Catherine and then we'll come back to you, Jenny, when you come back.
Perfect.
Catherine, welcome. Lovely to see you. And your ceramics. They're beautiful. Can you tell us about your work and your why, please?
Yes, I make a lot of ceramics out of porcelain, which I've been doing about the last 6 or 7 years. I came to it late, actually. I used to be an occupational therapist. Part of the training involved adapting creative activities for therapeutic purposes. I think somebody earlier on talked about the therapeutic nature of making, and that's always been really important to me. But I've always, as everybody else has said, I've made things since I was out of whatever was to hand. Being creative is just incredibly important to me. It's cardboard or wire or textiles, whatever. But it took me a long time to just discover clay. After occupational therapy, I was a gardener for a few years at one of the gardens in Cambridge, which was lovely, but still sort of looking for what felt right, what felt like me. And this is it. I make functional things and hand throw porcelain. And also, I've more recently been experimenting with a mixture of techniques, so hand throwing and then perhaps carving into a piece, like this little box here.
Oh, lovely.
Into the lid. There's so much you can do with clay. It's just such a versatile. You can add to it, subtract from it, mold it, and then the magic of firing, and then suddenly you lift the lid. You put all these things in that are sort of covered in a chalky looking glaze, and they come out, in the most beautiful colours. I just find something quite magical about it. I mean, sometimes it's disastrous. You have to start again, and other times it's just wonderful. I think there's that element of alchemy and and just the experimentation, and you never quite know what's going to happen. Other people have talked about the fact that you don't always know where you're going with and I love that.
And how did you know with clay? You said that you kind of experimented with other things. What happened when you actually got your hands on clay? Was there like an immediate thing of, this is it, I've found what I want to do, or was it really like that?
Yeah, no, it just felt absolutely right. A friend recommended some pottery lessons, and I went along and thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. So no, it's just magic. Just love it.
I love that. I love that kind of instant recognition of when you know what it is that you want to do. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I spoke to a ceramicist recently, and she said that she got into ceramics because her son was doing GCSE pottery, or he was doing it in his art. And so she booked him in for some extra lessons just because he loved it so much. And she went along and she loved it. Exactly what you said. She just put her hands on that clay and just said, this is it. This is actually what I've got to do. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like coming home. You just do what you're supposed to be doing. There's just a rightness about the material and the process. And I just love getting lost in the creative process. It's a wonderful thing.
Do you ever use your work and marry it back with being an occupational therapist? Have you ever done any therapy work with clay, or is that not?
I haven't done that, but I think it informs a lot of what I do, because I work with people who are who'd had strokes, helping with their rehabilitation, and just the importance of the use of things and holding things, and the size of a handle, the angle of a handle, the proportions, those. I think without being an OT, I wouldn't have such a sort of finely tuned sense of what works.
Absolutely.
Sometimes
I wouldn't have even thought of that. I wouldn't even have thought of that lovely correlation of how that one job can then really impact what you do now as a creative. That's amazing.
But and yes, just making things for friends, with particular requirements in mind, or somebody perhaps who has a difficulty and they want something with a particular purpose. That's really something.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Your work is lovely. The shades there behind you are just beautiful. Really lovely.
I think colour is really important to me as well. I think others of you have said, just bringing a little joy, just using something for something every day. It's different from jewellery and the beauty of adornment. Out of is a bit more day to day in some ways. But actually, if you're drinking your coffee out of something that you love that makes you smile, then you can start the day.
Absolutely.
With a very boring mug you bought from the garage or something.
But that is so true. I have, favourite mugs. I also recently spoke to a financial advisor who's really, she really focuses on well-being and money. A lot of us have issues around money and our relationship with money. And she says, when you're sitting down to do your accounts, or when you're sitting down to do something regarding money that you really don't want to do, just make sure you've got a cup of tea in your favourite mug. Make sure it's a handmade mug, so exactly with the jewellery, you're right. There's all this, the lovely good feeling that handmade things give people, which again is just joyous, isn't it?
Yeah, and just having them in your life every day. I mean, a favourite mug is a really important thing.
Yes, it is. It really is. Jennie, we're going to come back to you.
Hello.
You were telling us about being in Sheffield you'd been in Sheffield now for 30 years.
I was. Sorry about that. That is lockdown. That's my son stole my charger last night.
Lockdown life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We've taken to putting tape on it now, so we know who's is who.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm back. So I've been in Sheffield for 30 years making. I set up, as soon as I graduated, and I made for trade. So I did probably 15 years of trade fairs and repeat making, all by hand. I designed for some high street shops, and then I had children and it all changed. I didn't have the bench time anymore to sit and make these repeat designs and go to the trade fairs and sell them. And I just thought, I'm going to make things I love, and that's what I did. So I changed my business completely, and I think that by being in Sheffield, the industrial it's kind of osmosis, the industrial goings on in Sheffield, and I just started making things that were quite raw. They've got some energy and integrity. They're very northern, my pieces, and I didn't have the market, but I made the pieces, and the people found me. The customers who enjoy it found me. So I'm quite blessed, really, that I've got a lot of people who get what I do, which is really based on process and just a love of making in metal. Yeah.
Have you got some of your pieces there that we can have a look at? Have you got anything that we can see?
This is my little boy modelling some of my bangles. So these, I mean, they're. Can you see them in?
Yeah, yeah.
So the diamonds I use are quite industrial diamonds. They're not traditional, brilliant. They're not glitzy. They're very quietly. They're quietly diamonds.
I love that, quietly diamonds.
They're quietly diamonds. They're not big show. They're not big showy pieces, but they are discreetly, beautiful. And the stones I use, I don't go for the beautiful perfection, the quality. I love the flaws, and I love the sort of little impurities that you get within a lot of the natural stones. So a lot of my pieces they're designed around the hand-picked stones as well. And that's my journey, really. That's where I am now. And our building has been closed through at the end of March. It closed, and I thought I'd feel a bit more anxious about not being able to get into work, but actually I also haven't felt very creative through it, which is just as well, because we couldn't get into the studios anyway. But it felt like a time to rest and focus on homeschooling. Done a lot of homeschooling, and we also got a puppy. We thought it was the perfect time to get a little puppy.
Yeah.
So I've been doing those kinds of things, and I genuinely, although it is my therapy in everyday work, I mean, I make a full-time living from what I do. It did feel like a good time to rest, and
yes,
just take a little bit of time and just not even think about it. Really, it hasn't actually made me that anxious that I couldn't get in and work, which has surprised me, because it normally is where I'd come. It's my escape. The studio. So yeah.
But I think rest is so important for creatives.
I think we give ourselves enough rest.
No, and also I think like your creativity, please correct me if I'm wrong, comes in those moments of rest. Just in the work that I do, I know that when I'm walking the dog, if I'm on a long walk, that's when I have my ideas. That's when I write the best emails. That's when I write the best blog posts. It's that whole, just stepping back. So I've got a question now. Whoever wants to answer, just please put your hand up. Do you think that this hasn't got nothing to do with why, but I'm just asking you. Do you think that coming out of lockdown and the pandemic and what's happened, do you think that you as creatives are going to come out with new bodies of work maybe, or a different way you create, or do you think there's going to be a change in what you do, or will you just go back to it with, oh, I'm here and I'm doing it? Katherine.
Sorry.
Yeah, Katherine, sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
We'll start with Katherine and then we'll come to you, Jennie.
Yeah, I think having had, as you said, rest and time to reflect and time to explore has given me the opportunity to just have a pause and come up with new ideas, which I'm having a lot of fun with exploring. And they always seem to come to me stupidly in the morning when I wake up about 4 o'clock. I think, oh, I must quickly write that down before I forget it. So now I think actually this time is going to cause direction and develop some new work, which is exciting.
Yeah. Jennie, what were you going to say about going back to work, to creating?
Everything. I know it's your human brain. You want everything. You want to know what's happening, and I can't picture. I can't picture going back to how things were in terms of selling.
Yeah. So,
and I think everybody's, when you're creative, I think people will find ways. But at the moment, I honestly can't picture how it's going to work. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think lots of things probably need to change anyway. So I think it's quite exciting to watch how it kind of rolls out, really. Yeah, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think we're all in a position of the unknown, really, you know, in terms of how we sell and how we market and how we meet our customers. You know, I think there is, and probably across most industries, there is going to be this change of how we deal with each other, you know. And like you say, it's exciting and also a challenge. It's a real challenge. You know, you have to be even more creative in how you do things.
Yes, more energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I've got my first craft market opening back up in 2 weeks.
Really? Gosh.
It's weird because it's an outdoor one. It's
okay.
Next to the farmers market, there's an arts market as well, which is really local to me, and I usually do that one every month. But it's quite strange thinking about going back to it. I don't really know how it's going to be, or I don't know whether I'm going to let people try things on. I still haven't really worked out how it's all going to work.
Yeah, see, all of that, I hadn't even thought about that whole thing of people trying things on, and it's all an unknown. Does anybody else want to say anything about their why or their kind of their purpose in what they do? You've all said such lovely things. Is there anything that anybody wants to add at all?
I suppose one thing that I didn't touch on was when you first start making, you don't realise, when you first start making and then go into the craft and art industry, you don't realise the community that comes along with it as well. And I think that's something that I found that I wasn't expecting to find, was this amazing network of makers, and you know, who are all on the very same wavelengths, and just being able to talk about kind of shows, you know, different techniques and how they've done stuff. And it's been really nice to be able to communicate back and forth with the makers. And like I said, having that like-minded network has been an incredible, you know, it's a really good, it's an honour to be able to join that community.
Yeah. That's lovely. That's such a lovely thing to say. And I just feel it now with all of you here, you know, that when somebody says something, you know, the rest of you are going, yep, you know, there is that whole connection of, this is who we are, you know, this is just such an integral part of our makeup, you know, this is just what we do.
Yeah, it was so lovely to hear everybody saying, you know, this is who I am, this is what I do.
Yeah.
This way since I was tiny, and everyone was saying, yes, me too.
Yeah. Kathy, what did you want to say?
Just, it doesn't seem to matter what discipline you work in, whether you're a potter, a jeweler, a printmaker, you know, a wood turner. Everyone, there is, like Libby said, this community spirit, and actually people are it's just incredibly supportive. And people, even if you're not working in the same discipline, everyone goes through the same things, which is because quite often, obviously, we work in isolation, don't we? And so then to have someone turn around and say, actually, it's completely natural to have a non-creative time and to feel like you're in a bit of a slump, and then you come up, you know, and it's ebbs and flows. And the fact that other people, you know it yourself, but when you're going through it, you lose confidence a bit. And then for other people to just say, no, you know, you'll keep going, you know, you'll get your creativity back or whatever. It's so supportive. Yeah.
Yes. And we always feel like that too with the work that we do, working with creatives, you know, that like you say, Kathy, you know, generally you all work on your own, and especially now in lockdown, you know, even more so, you're really just having to work where you can work and generally on your own. So yeah, that community is so important, and also just that learning and that reassurance of someone's going, oh yeah, I feel like that all the time, or you know, or why don't you try this, you know, I tried that. It's really, really lovely. And so we're gonna have to try and make a different way of doing that. You know, Instagram I think is fantastic for that in terms of people commenting and connecting, you know, but yeah, if events aren't going to be as we know them, then yeah, that's going to be another really important part of keeping your creative community going, isn't it? Absolutely. Thank you so much. I've had such a lovely time. Really lovely seeing you all, and thank you for sharing all your lovely stories, and have a lovely afternoon, and thank you for joining us at the online Digital Craft Festival. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice to meet you all.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.